On the 5th of May, in the opening round of the 2026 Italian Open, two players walk onto a Roman clay court carrying losses so recent the bruises are still fresh, and neither can afford another one. Eala, the 20-year-old left-hander from the Philippines who has bent the top of this sport toward her all season on hard courts, steps onto the red dirt where every result so far in 2026 has ended in a familiar sting. Magdalena Fręch, the 28-year-old from Lodz who reached a career-high ranking barely 18 months ago, arrives having lost 5 consecutive singles matches. Something has to give. This is the sort of draw that looks innocuous on paper, world number 42 versus world number 45, but conceals a combustion chamber underneath. Let me explain why this match fascinates me, and why I think Eala wins it. Start with Frech, because understanding her current condition tells you what Eala is actually walking into. In 2024, Frech was a revelation. She won Guadalajara, made the Prague final, pushed Sabalenka at Wuhan, reached the 4th round of the Australian Open. The ranking climbed to 22 in October. She was a steady, dependable grinder with a particularly impressive breakpoint conversion rate. She breaks serve in roughly 57% of her service games when she gets a chance this season, which puts her in the 93rd percentile on tour. The woman can return. Her right-handed game is built on depth, consistency, and an unusual ability to extend rallies until the opponent blinks first. But 2025 was unkind. The record slipped to 15 wins and 25 losses. She finished the year ranked 59th after starting in the low 20s. And 2026 has continued that erosion. She stands at 10 wins and 11 losses for the year. More worryingly, on clay specifically, a surface where she holds a career 55% win rate and where she reached that Merida final just 6 weeks ago, her recent form has completely cratered. She lost to Solana Sierra at Madrid in straight sets, managing only 3 break points in 3 attempts, winning just 59% of first serve points. 5 straight losses. A player whose game depends on grinding out rallies and outlasting opponents requires confidence, and confidence is the first resource that drains during a losing run. Now let me tell you what that means for Eala. She is walking into a match against a player who, by every measurable metric of recent form, is diminished. Not finished, Frech's career clay numbers are too strong for anyone to write her off on this surface, but visibly compromised. That is not nothing. In professional tennis, recognizing when your opponent is psychologically fragile is a skill in itself, and Eala possesses it. Here is the thing about Eala that people who only check results might miss about her 2026 clay season. Yes, she lost to Fernandez at Stuttgart. Yes, Mertens demolished her in Madrid. But consider the texture of those losses. Stuttgart was her second clay match of the year, against a player, Fernandez, who moves like she was born on dirt despite being Canadian. The scoreline was 1-4. Brisk, sure. But Eala had barely acclimated. Madrid told a different story. She beat Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova in the opening round 6-3, 6-3. That is a former Grand Slam finalist and a woman who has played hundreds of matches on clay. Eala dispatched her with minimal fuss, serving relatively well, constructing points with patience, using her left-handed angles to pull Pavlyuchenkova out of her comfort zone. The Mertens loss that followed was ugly, 2-1, but Mertens was playing at an absurdly high level, winning 93% of first serve points. That kind of serving performance flattens most opponents regardless of surface. What I take from Eala's clay swing is that she is capable of winning convincingly on this surface against a specific profile of opponent, players who give her time on the ball, who don't overwhelm her serve with raw pace, and who engage in the kind of prolonged baseline patterns where Eala's return game becomes lethal. Frech is exactly that profile. Frech averages 3 aces per match. Her serve speed sits in the bottom 20th percentile on tour. She does not blast opponents off the court. She invites you into rallies and tries to outlast you with depth and patience. The problem for Frech is that Eala's single greatest strength, her return of serve, targets precisely this approach. When you serve in the mid-150s and your opponent treats every second serve as an invitation to attack, you are playing her game. Eala has been described by multiple analysts as having one of the best return games among rising players on tour. She steps inside the baseline on second serves, drives the ball back with penetrating depth, and immediately flips the point onto the server's backhand. Against a big server, this approach carries risk because first serves pin her back and disrupt her timing. Against Frech, who will deliver maybe 2 or 3 aces maximum, Eala's return prowess operates at full capacity. Now, let me address the obvious counterargument. Eala's serve is a known vulnerability. She averages barely 1 ace per match. Her first serve percentage sits around 63%, and the speed on her delivery is among the lowest in the top 50. On clay, where the surface slows everything down and gives returners extra time, this weakness should theoretically be amplified. Frech herself converts break points at an elite rate, nearly 4 breaks per match on average. So isn't Eala walking into a situation where her own serve gets shredded too? In theory, yes. In practice, this is where the left-handed factor intervenes. Eala's serve may lack pace, but it generates angles that right-handed opponents find geometrically awkward to handle. The left-handed slice, serve out wide on the ad court, pulls returners off the court in a direction they rarely face. On clay, where the ball kicks and skids differently off the surface, these angles become even more pronounced. Frech's return positioning will need constant adjustment to account for the spin direction she almost never encounters. There are perhaps a dozen left-handers in the WTA Top 100. Frech will have faced very few of them recently, and probably none during her current 5-match losing streak. Let me also consider the mental dimension. Eala arrives at this tournament with something that transcends her clay results, a season narrative that positions her as someone ascending. She reached a quarterfinal in Dubai where she extended Coco Gauff. She made the 4th round at Indian Wells. She pushed into the last 16 at Miami, where last year she made the semifinals by beating Swiatek and Keys. Her career-high ranking of 29 came just 2 months ago. The slide from 29 to 42 is real, but it corresponds almost entirely to the clay swing, a surface where she has historically struggled. She knows this. Her team knows this. The decision to play a packed clay schedule, Linz, Stuttgart, Madrid, now Rome, plus Parma and Strasbourg and Roland Garros ahead, tells you that Eala and her coach Joan Bosch are deliberately accepting short-term pain for long-term development. This is not a player in crisis. This is a player in construction. Frech, by contrast, is in a different psychological space entirely. When you are 28 and your ranking has slipped from 22 to the mid-40s, and you have lost 5 straight, the internal calculation is different. The question you face is not, am I building towards something, but rather, was 2024 the peak, and is this the other side? I am not suggesting Frech believes that consciously, athletes rarely do, but the body knows. Confidence during a losing streak at 28 feels different than confidence during a learning curve at 20. Let me talk about the tactical construction I expect to see. Eala will likely open the match with an aggressive return posture, standing well inside the baseline on Frech's second serve, trying to establish early in the match that every service game will be contested. If she can break early in the first set, and given Frech's current form, this seems probable, the complexion of the match shifts dramatically. Frech is the kind of player who needs to be ahead to play her best tennis. Her career numbers show she wins 62% of opening sets over her career, but only 44% of third sets in 2026. She is not a comeback player. She is a frontrunner whose game tightens when trailing. From the Eala perspective, the key is not to let Frech settle into long, comfortable rallies in the middle of the court. Eala's left-handed forehand naturally pulls balls to Frech's backhand side, and on clay, where the ball bounces higher, that heavy topspin to the single-handed weight, Frech uses a two-handed backhand. So the rally dynamic becomes more about redirecting Frech side to side rather than exposing a technical weakness. What Eala can exploit is Frech's relatively passive net game. Frech wins only about 60% of her net points and comes forward rarely. If Eala can construct points that draw Frech forward, using drop shots, short angles, and the kind of variety that Nadal Academy players absorb through osmosis, she can create uncomfortable scenarios for a player whose comfort zone is 6 feet behind the baseline. The other factor worth discussing is physicality. Eala is 5'9". Frech is 5'7". On clay, where rallies extend and footwork becomes paramount, the taller player does not always have the advantage. Shorter players can often stay lower to the ground and maintain better balance on the sliding surface. But Eala's height gives her leverage on ground strokes, particularly the serve return, where she can take the ball earlier and redirect with angles that a shorter player generates less naturally. It is a marginal advantage, but in a match between two players ranked 3 spots apart, marginal advantages determine outcomes. I want to acknowledge something about Rome specifically that matters here. The Foro Italico clay courts play slightly faster than Roland Garros or the smaller clay events on the WTA calendar. The balls tend to fly through the court a bit more, and the conditions in early May can be dry and warm, which reduces the heavy, high-bouncing characteristics that make clay so punishing for players with flatter strokes. Eala's game, built on taking the ball early, redirecting pace, and staying inside the baseline, actually benefits from faster clay conditions. The slower and heavier the clay plays, the more it exposes her serve and rewards the grinding style that Frech deploys. Faster clay narrows that gap. Here is my prediction, and I want to be specific about it. I believe Eala wins this match in straight sets. My projected score is something like 6-3, 6-4, or possibly 6-4, 6-3. I do not expect a bagel or a demolition because Frech is too experienced and too competent a ball striker to be humiliated, even during a losing streak. But I expect Eala to control the tempo of this match from the return side, to break Frech's serve at least once per set with relative comfort, and to hold her own service games well enough, aided by left-handed angles and variety, to prevent Frech from establishing the kind of return pressure she needs to compete. The reason I feel confident about this is the convergence of 3 factors. First, form trajectory. Eala is building imperfectly, frustratingly at times, but building. Her Pavlyuchenkova win showed she can execute on clay. Frech is declining, currently, by every measurable standard. Second, stylistic matchup. Eala's return dominance meets Frech's modest serve in a combination that structurally favors the Filipino. Third, psychological weight. Eala has nothing to lose in this match. She is a young player on clay, and any round she wins is progress. Frech is a veteran trying to arrest a slide, and that desperation either fuels comeback performances or accelerates collapse. Given the losing streak, I lean toward the latter. There is one scenario where I think Frech wins. If she comes out serving above her average, hitting her spots, pushing her first serve percentage above 65, maybe sneaking in 4 or 5 aces, she could neutralize Eala's return advantage and force the match into the kind of neutral rallies where her experience and pattern recognition give her an edge. Frech knows how to play clay tennis. She grew up on it in Poland. Her junior titles came on the surface. If her serve holds, her baseline depth is sufficient to pin Eala behind the baseline and exploit the Filipinos' occasional hesitancy in constructing points from deep positions. But this requires Frech to play above her current level, and asking a player on a 5-match losing streak to produce her best tennis in the opening round of a major tournament is asking a lot. One more thing. The winner of this match faces Sinyu Wang, who received a first-round bye. Wang is a big-hitting Chinese player ranked in the 30s, someone who would test either Eala or Frech with raw power. For Eala, winning this opening round is not just about collecting a single victory, it is about building the kind of early tournament momentum that has fueled her best results all season. In Dubai, she won her opener and rode that energy to the quarterfinals. In Auckland, she reached the semis after a confident first-round win. The pattern with Eala this year is clear: win your opener, and the belief compounds from there. I want to close by saying something about what this match represents beyond the scoreline. Alex Eala is the first Filipino to occupy this space in professional tennis. She is ranked 42 in the world at 20 years old. She trains at the Rafa Nadal Academy. She has beaten Iga Swiatek and Madison Keys and taken sets from Coco Gauff. And she is here, in Rome, choosing to compete on clay, the surface that gives her the least, that exposes her most, that demands she become something she was not built to be. That is not a player avoiding difficulty. That is a player seeking it. Magdalena Fręch is the obstacle between Eala and another step in that ongoing construction project. Based on the evidence, the form lines, the matchup dynamics, the psychological terrain, and the physical conditions of these Roman courts, I believe Eala clears it. Not easily, not dominantly, but clearly. This is her match to take, and I think she takes it.